Hello, and welcome to the 30th episode of my Failed Franchises series. In this series, I look at defunct rail operators and see if they should be deemed as a failure. Today, we are finally looking at SWT Trains, an operator which has been highly requested in my previous comment section. We'll ask the question of whether or not SWT Trains were a good operator, or should they instead be deemed as a failure. Today is part 1 of SWT Trains, where I'll be looking at the operator up until the 2007 franchise change. Do like and subscribe so you don't miss the subsequent episode, and consider becoming a channel or Patreon member if you enjoy. Thank you. We begin in 1996 when Britain's railway network was being privatised. The network was split into several franchises, with one of these being the South West franchise. This franchise would cover most services out of London Waterloo along the South West Main Line, towards destinations such as Woking, Basingstoke, Guildford, Portsmouth, Southampton, Salisbury, Exeter, Bournemouth and Weymouth, as well as covering key commuter routes such as the Hounslow Loop, services to Windsor, Neaton, Riverside, Reading, Shepperton, Dorking, Chessington South and Alton. The franchise would also operate services to Lymington Pier from Brockenhurst and Romsey to Salisbury services. Some trains on the franchise would also operate as far as Brighton, Bristol, Paignton and Plymouth. Who would run this new franchise though? The franchise was the first in the UK to be tendered and was won by the bus company Stagecoach, with the contract running until 2001. Stagecoach would brand services as South West Trains, and would also run the Island Line services on the Isle of Wight, incorporating the two into a joint brand despite being different operators legally until 2007. Services on the Isle of Wight is for another day though. As for South West Trains and their stock, well, they inherited a large fleet of slam-door electric multiple units and express sprinter diesel units. These came in the form of Class 411s, Class 412s, Class 421s, and Class 423 slam-door EMUs, which covered a range of commuter and long-distance services. Class 455s also operated local services, with Class 442s, under 10 years old at the time of South West Trains beginning operations, being used in Weymouth and Portsmouth services. As for diesel sets, South West Trains inherited a large fleet of 22 Class 159s for services towards Salisbury and Exeter. South West Trains began operations on the 31st of January 1996, running Britain's first privatised train in 50 years. The only reason South West Trains ran the first train was due to Great Western having to run the first service as a bus due to legal complications regarding the transfer of the rail service. Despite the 1:50 a.m. Fishguard to Paddington rail replacement bus service being ran by Great Western, the first actual private rail service ran was by South West Trains, the 0510 Twickenham to Waterloo service. South West Trains' start wasn't anything amazing, but they did invest in the service. The initial franchise for South West Trains did not see them have to order any new trains, but they did so anyway. In November 1996, South West Trains placed an order with Alstom for 30 new air-conditioned 4-car EMUs, which would run services out of Waterloo, coming in the form of Class 458s, costing £90 million, with expected entry into service by 1998. The order didn't come without controversy though, as the 458s were ordered from South West Trains from Porterbrook, who were also owned by Stagecoach at the time, with some suggesting that there was a conflict of interest with Porterbrook, receiving huge profits from the leasing of the units, which were not actually required in South West Trains' franchise. The unit suffered huge issues though, and despite the first Class 458 being accepted into service for 1998, the first actual passenger service didn't run until much later, due to leaky roofs, mechanical and technical issues. By 1999, South West Trains' profits doubled in 1 year, to a record £34.4 million, leading to criticism from several railway organisations. Save Our Railways director Jonathan Bray suggested that South West Trains was a gravy train, with soaring profits despite worse services. Punctuality for South West had been a problem, starting at around 90% punctuality, but progressively getting worse, reaching 79% by 1998. South West Trains' finance director pointed out that South West had invested in the route, such as more security staff and the new Class 458s, despite the fleet still not having entered service at the time. South West Trains were caught in more hot water in October 1999, when they and Connex blocked a move which would see a whistleblower system of confidential reporting on accidents or safety-related incidents for Railtrack, the precursor to Network Rail. The move followed several fatal crashes on the network, with many wondering why the railway network was privatised in the first place, with services deteriorating across the UK. There was some good news for South West passengers though, as, due to the poor punctuality of the company, they would see fares fall by 2% on commuter season ticket routes for 2000. December saw Stagecoach confirm it would be looking for more commuter London rail operations, such as the Thameslink or Thames franchise. Stagecoach did reassure passengers in the South West by confirming that they had laid out a plan to improve the service on South West trains, should they win the franchise, due 2001. This came at a time when Stagecoach decided to sell its 49% share in leaseholder Porterbrook. In February 2000, the Class 458 Junipers finally entered service with many issues. During 2000, only 2 units, 458004 and 458005, were available for use due to the terrible reliability with the coupling and decoupling times of half an hour per 2 units, meaning that South West had to run the 458s in a semi-permanent pair of 8 carriages, meaning that some services had 8 coaches, despite only really needing 4. The units also failed to pass the Disability Discrimination Act of 1995, and had to receive temporary exemptions on a total of 10 different points, such as the size of internal information passenger displays. Attention was quickly turned away from the 458s, however, when, in March, a South West train service arriving into Waterloo crashed into another train due to a lack of driver awareness. The train, from Chessington, arrived at 1:50 p.m, and was due to form another service back to Chessington by coupling with another unit at Waterloo. However, the arriving unit came in too quickly and crashed, causing 30 injuries. This led to more criticism of the rail system just months after the fatal Southall crash. 14 passengers were taken to St Thomas's Hospital, with just 1 serious injury reported. Regardless, in April 2001, the Strategic Rail Authority awarded Stagecoach and South West Trains a new franchise lasting for 20 years. However, this was later cut to just 3. The new franchise would see South West order the largest single train order in British history, the refurbishment of all its stations, and the hiring of more drivers to reduce short-notice cancellations. The new order, in April 2001, would see 785 new vehicles ordered from the Siemens Desiro family, including 127 Class 450s for commuter services out of Waterloo, and 45 Class 444s for longer distance services to Poole, Weymouth and Portsmouth. This order also came with South West acquiring 8 two-car Class 170-3 units, later up to 9 units, to supplement the existing Class 159 fleet. These units operated Waterloo to Salisbury, Reading and Brighton trains, as well as a new Southampton local service and irregular services to Exeter. April 2001 also saw the last South West service to Paignton run. Going into 2002, South West trains had strike issues. The RMT union confirmed strikes on South West for several days, running 600 out of the usual 1,700 services, leaving many passengers without trains into London. The strikes ran due to issues with guards, with 100 train managers stepping in as guards during the strike action. The RMT were worried that driver-only operation could be brought into use following the introduction of the new Desiro units, with a lack of pay rise also being an issue. South West issued a warning of a potential mass sacking of 2,500 guards if they did not cease strike action. South West Trains suggested that each day of strike action costed the company millions of pounds. The RMT suggested that they would press on with strike action, highlighting how guards ensured services were safe for passengers. Further strikes in February also occurred, with a pay offer accepted by the RMT in March. 2002 saw South West Trains accept the first of 127 4-car Class 450s to begin testing out of Waterloo. South West Trains hoped to see the final slam door units run in 2005, with 2 units retained and refurbished for Lymington Pier branch services. As for strike action, March received the 3rd consecutive month of strikes, with the RMT walking out on 12 different operators over being downgraded to Kit Kat sellers, rather than safety-critical members of staff. However, in a rare turn of events, South West Trains were one of just 2 companies who did not go on strike, after their staff members rejected a strike ballot, partly due to the previous strikes that had only just been resolved with South West Trains. October 2003 saw the first of the Class 450s enter service, starting the beginning of the end for the slam door units, with the introduction of the Class 444s a year later, seeing the Class 442s move on to Weymouth services only and eventually being withdrawn. 2004 also saw the shock announcement that South West would be withdrawing the Class 458s, which had only just been introduced 4 years ago, costing £90 million, averaging £22.5 million per year of operations. The Junipers were so unreliable that South West had little choice but to retire the units to improve reliability. South West confirmed that they would be ordering more Class 450s to replace the final 458s, which would all return to Porterbrook by 2006, when the lease ended on the final unit. The Junipers encountered a fault every 4,300 miles, versus the slam door trains which only broke down once every 50,000 miles. The new DeZeros had already gone 21,000 miles without breakdown, and would likely exceed the 50,000 mile figure. The announcement came at a time when South West Trains' reliability had plummeted to 73%, with this prompting South West Trains to have a look at the timetable itself. The South Western Mainline timetable dated back from 1967, when the line was electrified, with several alterations, but it was essentially the same. The new December 2004 timetable would transform the South West Mainline, with increased margins at Woking Junction to coincide with the longer dwell times caused by the Class 450's slow doors, with service patterns being revised to fully reflect station usage and passenger needs. Services would be cut to Brighton and Plymouth, whilst platforms at Waterloo would be designated as a section per route type, such as commuter services departing from platforms 1 to 5. Dwell times at Waterloo and other terminals were extended, with a standard hour timetable introduced to ensure predictability for passengers, with extra peak time services added onto this. The new timetable in December was a huge success, with reliability creeping back up into the 90 percentage points, largely due to the increased layovers and new DeZero units. The DeZeros did have their downside though, with the 750-volt electric track not enough to power the new DeZero trains, leading to more substations having to be built to power the new units. Elsewhere, May 2004 also saw a smoking ban on all South West services, with all services at all times now banning smoking, following a cigarette fire on one of its slam door trains a year prior. SWT also retained the franchise until 2007, being awarded a new 3-year direct award contract. May 2005 saw the end of an era for London, the final slam door trains. The 25th of May 2005 saw the final South West train slam door service run, with this being the last one in the capital and one of the last slam door trains in Britain. The 155-strong Mark I fleet had finally been replaced with the new DeZero trains. South West Trains would, as aforementioned, retain 2 Class 421s for the Lymington branch. The units would be refurbished and repainted in a new Heritage British Rail green livery and operate in a heritage-like fashion. The units would receive central door locking systems and other safety features, which would allow them to stay in operation past the November deadline for slam door trains. December 2005 saw the Department for Transport announce Arriva, First Group, MTRC Containers, National Express and Stagecoach as shortlisted bidders for the next South Western franchise, which would start in February 2007. The new franchise would be renamed from South West to South Western franchise and would include Island Line services directly in the franchise. The franchise would also see the last services to Brighton and Plymouth withdrawn. Stagecoach were not overly optimistic about winning the South Western franchise, with Stagecoach having recently missed out on the Kent franchise, leaving Stagecoach with only one operator outright, South West Trains. Stagecoach's shares plummeted, with many suggesting that Stagecoach may well lose the franchise, despite rivals National Express dropping out of the running before 2006. The announcement of the franchise came in September 2006, when Stagecoach was confirmed to have retained operations of South West Trains and the new South Western franchise. Stagecoach was paid the Department for Transport £1.19 billion over the 10-year franchise, investing £40 million in its stations and increasing capacity by 21% on mainline and commuter services through longer trains. A new smart card ticketing system would also be introduced. The new franchise would see the removal of the 9 Class 170s, 8 of which would join First Trans-Pennine Express, for exchange of several Class 158s and modified 159s, designated as Class 159-1s. Elsewhere, South West Trains confirmed that the Class 442s would be fully withdrawn by February 2007 and replaced by the Class 458s, returning to the company for a much lower leasing fee and modifications to improve reliability and comply with disability requirements. Refurbishment of the Junipers would end by 2010, whilst regenerative braking would also be implemented by mid-2011. The refreshed 458s would now be able to achieve 106,000 miles before failure, making them some of the most reliable trains in the country, earning them a golden spanner by modern railways. The new franchise would also see refurbishments on the Class 455s, which would see South West Trains increased capacity in the trains by controversially removing seats, allowing for more people to stand. The refurbishment and modifications weren't seen as ideal, but South West Trains suggested that they were necessary until a replacement for the 455s could be procured. most likely for the next franchise in 2017. The new Southwestern franchise began on the 4th of February 2007, lasting for 10 years. We'll look at that in the next and final episode of Southwest Trains. First, let's conclude on the first 11 years of Southwest Trains operations. They began operations in 1996 by ordering the troubled Class 458 Junipers. Poor performance with reliability and overcrowding led to the December 2004 timetable overhaul. This came at the same time as the new Desiro Class 450 and 444 rollout, which saw an end to slam door operations out of Waterloo by May 2005. New Class 170 Turbostars were also introduced and subsequently replaced by Class 158 and 159s from First Transparent Express. The Class 458s also saw an overhaul, with reliability improving drastically, whilst the refurbishment of the 455s commenced in early 2007. So, thus far, should Southwest Trains be deemed as a success or a failure? I think, up until 2007, Southwest Trains could easily be deemed as a success for their drastic improvement of rolling stock and December 2004 successful timetable overhaul. Punctuality increased from a low of 73% to the 90% mark, and refurbishment was well underway for the Class 455s and 458s, as well as a new stock being fully rolled out. But what do you think? Let me know in the comments below, and thanks for watching today's video. Do consider liking and subscribing. Special thanks to my first class members Callum Martin Bell, Crispin McKee and John Williams, as well as my business zone members Andrew Bowen, Anthony Harris, Anthony James Moore, ARK, Clive's Travel and Trains, Connor Grieg, Craig Mitchell 43, Dave CDF, Gordon Walker, JBNel, J Techo, Lewis C21, That Transport Girl and The Average Teleporter. You can get your name on this list from as little as £2.99 a month and help me to make my videos in return for special perks such as early access to videos. I really appreciate it, so thanks a lot. Also, thanks to everyone that's let me use their footage for today's video. You can find their channel in the description or pinned comment. Once again, thanks ever so much for watching. Check out my Blue Sky, Twitter and Discord server in the link below, and I hope to see you soon. Goodbye.